Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Just going to jump straight into talking a little bit about the whole silver bullet mindset. I'm kind of using that as an anchor point as a topic, but really just wanted to hit a few things. I'm not going to obviously cover every single aspect of the silver bullet mindset that you can possibly imagine. Because I don't want the video to be extremely long, but I want to at least get across some essentials, right? Some of it will start out pretty obvious, and we'll worm our way in. Okay. So silver bullet mindset, really, that one thing is going to solve all my problems. A lot of times people can get into this silver bullet mindset. Well, this one tool, this one approach, this one way of doing it, well, it worked for them, so that's just the one way. Very linear, right? Silver bullet mindset also kind of parallels the linear mindset, where it is not looking at a problem from multiple perspectives, not evaluating different ways of handling or solving problems too, right? Silver bullet mindset too can be single points of failure in an organization. So if you have subject matter expert, right, and they for whatever reason, planning or otherwise, depart your organization, um, now you have expertise that has left the building, right? And now, if it was abrupt and not planned, then and you didn't prepare for it, you don't have continuity and standard work and all these other good things in place, and you haven't passed the ball, the baton forward to the next person to kind of take on the subject matter expert kind of role, at least as a primary. You want many to be subject matter experts, hopefully. But if you haven't done that, then what happens is that your organization takes a few steps back. In some cases, your organization can take many steps back. And add to that too, if your organization has a product or service, usually it's typically more product oriented, but a product failure, then that can set back an organization and put the subject matter experts in doubt now, right? Because people can make mistakes, things do occur. Hopefully not catastrophically, but we do know it happens, right? It's just a sad reality of life in the world. But we don't want it to happen. And that's why we don't want a silver bullet mindset, because a silver bullet mindset doesn't allow us to be flexible enough, nimble enough in our problem solving and our ability to really take on and take in, absorb what's actually occurring, right? So you may have functional equipment issues. This could stem from your software and your computer systems and all of that, your facilities to your, machinery to vehicles, you name it, right? It could cross the gamut when it comes to working tools in that sense, right? You could have issues on that side of the house. You could have issues on a personnel side of the house. Maybe they're not developed. Maybe they're not adequately trained. Maybe you have high turnover because the culture is poor, because you're not engaging with your team. You're not doing daily management walk. There's so many things. And this is why you can't approach these things linearly. This is why it takes a team, really. And if you're a site leader or further up the line, you have to be able to trust and mentor and train even your staff members. Say, look, this is, you're going to have to unfold and unpack some things, and don't go on the assumption, because if they're simply tackling things from a linear perspective themselves, you may not be as the primary leader. But if your department leaders and functional leaders are hitting problems and challenges and things that come up linearly, then things are basically being stacked in a way that you can't, things are being pushed off to the side. So the silver bullet mindset also means I can only kind of tackle in kind of in succession. Now, you can't completely avoid the succession of problem solving and overcoming and putting things into place, but you can minimize the impact and steer clear of that silver bullet mindset, linear thinking, by getting your team, creating a team that is flexible, able to handle personnel, able to work with people, engage themselves. If the broader team is if the functionals and the staff members are waiting for the primary site leader to do all the engagement, then that's a fail also. You know, it's a fail for the primary site leaders, but it's also and above, but it's also a failure for the departments and the functionals not to engage and to hide in their silos. So this is another thing that happens in that kind of silver bullet linear mindset. This is where silo thinking comes in because I can only deal with one problem at a time, right? Or I can only handle one thing. Now let's flip to the other extreme of the spectrum. You see organizations where they're running around in circles and such, you know, they're trying to push product out the door, right? So you have the rush of that. And add to that, they're running around in circles trying to solve the problems that'll help them to accomplish that. But they don't take the time to teach, train, and put a better systemic support system in place, an O plan, and so forth, so that so many have to put out fires, right? This is the putting out fires side of the house, right? This can you juggle multiple competing priorities? No, no. You can prioritize competing priorities, but you can't juggle them. You can um, you can give those to some of your staff members to take on some of that load, especially if they're competing, significant competing issues, right? To be able to help solve issues in a timely, expeditious way. But but there is no this notion of multitasking. I was in the Air Force, and I would say when you have two aircraft flying close together and you're trying to coordinate those, you're communicating with people on your own aircraft, the other aircraft, you're controlling functional operations around that. And you have procedural things you're doing. That is that is a life and death task saturated multitasking on a level that most should never have to really deal with, okay, or be prepared to deal with. And at any moment, it could all go wrong and catastrophically wrong real fast. Now, look at the common working world now, and you go, can I multitask? Well, first of all, is it life and death, right? If it's not life and death, sometimes you need to. I can't remember, so correct me, not correct me, but you can put it in any comments who said it. But it is to go faster isn't to go slow. It isn't to say, well, I'm going to go slow. No, it is that you go faster by being deliberate. When you're deliberate, then that gets things done in an effective way. But when you try to go too fast, then you just fall over yourself. You're falling over your feet. You're falling over, right? You're just it's a mess. Think of like a relay, a fun relay race, family relay races and different things, where they have events and stuff. Where you're trying to do things really fast, right? Remember the little game where you put the bat down and you put your forehead on the bat and spin it around, and then you got to race to do the thing and grab the thing and do another. It's like a relay, a fun little relay, and it's cute. It's fun, really fun for families, and going to the park and schools and all that stuff. But what it does demonstrate is that when you try to do too much too quickly, you're just falling all over yourself. You're not effective. You're not as effective, and when we're just playing around like that, that's fun because it's a goofiness, right? And there's that goofiness. There's that kind of, Three Stooges effect of, falling over, tripping all over each other, and we're entertained by that. But in the working organizational world, we don't want that because that those are safety issues. Not only can it cause catastrophic harm, to people and potentially be life threatening, but it can also be catastrophic to equipment and all of that, and those are just on their own, those are, just colossal, the loss of life or damage and when people getting hurt, that sort of thing, injured, that is the worst, right? Nothing worse than that. Nothing. But next to that, a little ways down, but next to that, the next thing in line is damage to equipment. And that sets an organization back. Both are catastrophic. One is just bleeds over into everything, at work and beyond, and it's awful. But the work-related ones, that catastrophes with equipment and facilities and all kinds of things like that, resources. Oh my gosh, the roof got tore off the building and and the weather got on the product that were on the pallets in the warehouse, and now all that product's ruined or whatever, right? That's that's bad, right? That's obviously bad. But this is what I'm saying is that we have to be deliberate, right? We have to be prepared. Okay, what are we going to do? What should we do with this stuff? Oh, well, we're going to wrap it in plastic. Oh, okay, that's smart. We're wrapped in plastic. That way, if anything ever happens, the likelihood that that product gets ruined by the rain and all that is less. Do you see where I'm going with that? It's obviously straightforward when we're just talking about it like this. But what happens is when people get going too fast, they try to do too much and they skip over and they don't see solutions that could be presenting themselves that are probably presenting themselves pretty overtly like that, but people don't see and they don't do. And so a site leader or above, later on you lose product or you have machines that break down. Oh, the machines broke down because we didn't do all the proper care and maintenance. Well, why didn't we? Right? These were all preventable things. When you're in that linear silver bullet mindset, you're so caught up in the one thing that you're not looking at enough things and then setting a priority. Then and then engaging your team to do these things. And this is why doing daily Gemba walks is so important if you're a site leader, because your people are going to miss something. And and sometimes it's not knowing that a thing is necessarily out of whack. Sometimes it's being able to ask the right questions. I've always been, thankfully, my gift, or if you want to say my gift is, I can get to a place in an organization where, I can find the right questions to hone in on and worm into and then find things that can help alleviate potential catastrophe later on, right? And you have to have a forward thinking mindset, but that's not a silver bullet linear mindset. You really have to think about it like if you're sitting in a swivel chair, spinning 360 degrees, right? Just like our, common everyday office chairs do. The reason it spins 360 degrees, right? And this is symbolic. There's a reason why it spins 360 degrees, okay? And that's your mindset. You have to have a 360-degree mindset. A silver bullet mindset and a linear mindset, is not going to help you. You have to be 360 degrees. Now, that is challenging. That can be stressful. But what you do is you front load, right, your big pushes up front to get systems in place so that as you go, it becomes more manageable to handle the heavy load. And you can handle the heavier load and the competing, right, priorities better. So one particular leader they both may have competing priorities, but one may have set themselves up systemically with their team and organized and gone through the what if scenarios, risk management efforts, right? To go, okay, when these things occur, if I'm out for a week or on vacation, this is how I want to handle, all the things. and you get ahead of all those things. Well, as many as you can, right? We're imperfect humans, but you could probably get ahead of about 80% of the low hanging fruit. If you're only left with 20 questionable unknowns or those sorts of things, then you can handle that. You can manage that. Your team can manage that. If you have a standardized way of doing things and tackling things, that also alleviates and makes it easier on the team, because then they can go back to the reference and go, oh, this is how we should be handling this, right? And then keep your team up to date and up to speed by having your entire team being super familiar with your operations plan, not just a manual or book or binder that lays off in a corner in a bookshelf somewhere that only 3 people have access to. No, your people need to have access to these things, and they need to be accountable to having an awareness about those. Have them go through it, sign off on them, so forth. Because you may have daily, weekly, monthly changes, right? Depending on your organization and how much and what you have going on, right? It just depends. But when you have changes and when you have things come through, you have a read file, right? A read folder, read file. It could be a clipboard, initially, whatever, that's out for folks to see, whatever. So these are the kind of the ways that you can kind of at least embed into your communications. But having standard work, super vital. Gemba walks, can't say it enough. Making sure that people are 5S'ing their areas and the entire facilities and all of that. And even if you're just doing office work, right? A lot of times people are, because I do use manufacturing as a prime example, because they're dealing with a lot of, moving parts and pieces, right? But not all of this applies to anybody who's even working in an office environment, because you're dealing with information in a similar way. You're dealing with handling of documentation and files and folders and software and information and and engineering those things in such a way, and then how you communicate, where you keep those, all this stuff. And so you want to be sound and you want to do the proper risk management. So you don't have to be in a well, let me put it this way, so that you can handle competing priorities, A, but B, you get yourself out of that linear silver bullet mindset. There is no silver bullet. Even with the system, how I put it together, how I've streamlined everything to help improve your organization very rapidly, even I have put in the things you need. It's like, I guess like being a baker or baking a cake. The ingredients are all out there, but when you arrange them in a particular way, then it creates a flavor or it creates an effect, right? Flavor is effect. It creates an effect that is as advantageous to the consumer, right, of your cake or your product or your team. So if you're designing your organization to be palatable for your team and to ensure that you have healthy organizational culture, the same mindset applies. All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.